This is the oldest temple unearthed anywhere on this planet.
What he discovered was mind-blowing. After discovering the first T-shaped pillar buried at the site, he soon found more of these massive structures.
What if the oldest site on Earth wasn't built to worship the gods, but to lock something away? Beneath the ancient stones of Göbekli Tepe, a place long believed to be humanity's first temple, a sealed chamber has finally been opened. And what was hidden inside for over 12,000 years is not just disturbing, it's deeply wrong. In southeastern Turkey, on a remote windswept hillside, a team of scientists carefully breached a chamber that had remained untouched since the dawn of civilization. The moment it opened, something felt off. The air that escaped wasn't just cold, it burned. The smell wasn't decay, it was metallic, unnatural, like something ancient had just been awakened. When cameras descended into the darkness, the discovery shattered every expectation. There was no treasure, no sacred altar, no signs of ritual worship. Instead, there were bodies, fused into metallic walls as if they had become part of the structure itself. A strange chemical compound, still reacting after 12 millennia, and carved into the surface, as if left in desperation, symbols that translated into a chilling warning. We sealed what called from below. This wasn't a temple, it was a prison. And now, it's open. Before we fully expose what was found below, take a second to like and subscribe, because some say there are truths history was never meant to reveal. The discovery that broke history let us go back to where this story begins and understand exactly why Göbekli Tepe was already one of the most disturbing archaeological sites ever found, long before anyone dug deeper. It is the early 1990s. A German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt arrives at a random hillside in southeastern Turkey that locals simply call Potbelly Hill. Decades earlier, researchers from the University of Chicago had surveyed the same site, decided it was nothing but a medieval cemetery, and left without a second look. Schmidt looked closer. He saw edges that were too clean, surfaces too flat, geometry that nature does not produce. These were not random rocks. These were pieces of something deliberate, something enormous, something buried on purpose. He started digging. Within days, his team struck limestone. Not rubble, a carved pillar standing over 5 meters tall. Then another, arranged in perfect circles, covered in intricate, precisely executed carvings of foxes, vultures, scorpions, snakes, and wild boars. The level of craftsmanship was so advanced that experienced archaeologists stopped mid-sentence when they saw the photographs. Then came the radiocarbon dating results, 9,600 years before the Common Era, over 11,000 years old, thousands of years before Stonehenge, thousands of years before the pyramids of Giza, built at a time when, according to every timeline of human development in existence, our ancestors were supposed to be nomadic hunter-gatherers with no agriculture, no permanent settlements, no organized society, and absolutely no ability to carve and transport 50-ton limestone pillars with surgical precision. Göbekli Tepe was immediately crowned the world's oldest known temple. But that label, comfortable and academic as it sounds, was already wrong. Because the more researchers studied this place, the less it behaved like a place of worship, and the more it behaved like something else entirely. The impossible problem. Who built this and how? Here is the question that has haunted every archaeologist who has ever spent time at Göbekli Tepe. How? Computer simulations designed to replicate the construction process using tools available in the Neolithic period. The rough stone hand tools and bone instruments that should have been the most advanced technology available at the time, consistently returned the same result. It should not have been possible. The organizational capacity required to coordinate hundreds of workers for decades. The mathematical precision needed to align the pillars with specific constellations. The engineering knowledge required to cut, transport, and raise stones weighing 10 to 50 tons across difficult terrain. None of it should have existed yet. Some researchers began looking at climate data and noticed something that reframed the entire question. Göbekli Tepe's construction period coincides almost precisely with the end of a catastrophic global event called the Younger Dryas. Around 10,900 BCE, the Earth was plunged into a sudden, violent ice age that lasted over 1,000 years. Mass extinctions, collapsed ecosystems, global population crashes, chaos on a planetary scale. What if Göbekli Tepe was not built by primitive hunter-gatherers at the dawn of civilization? What if it was built by survivors, people who had come through the catastrophe carrying knowledge from a world that no longer existed? A civilization sophisticated enough to accomplish the seemingly impossible, wiped out so completely that almost nothing of it remained. Klaus Schmidt himself, before his death in 2014, suggested something that his peers found deeply uncomfortable. Göbekli Tepe may not mark the beginning of civilization. It may be the last remnant of one that came before. And if that is true, everything we thought we knew about where we came from is wrong. But that was only the beginning, because years after Schmidt's death, a new research team arrived at Göbekli Tepe with better technology. And what they found buried beneath the main temple ring was not just older than history, it was a warning. The hidden archive, tablets, symbols, and a message left in stone. Beneath the main ring of pillars, under a sealed limestone floor, researchers discovered something that had not been part of any previous excavation report. Rows of flat tablets arranged edge to edge with extraordinary deliberateness, not scattered debris, not random fragments. A hidden archive buried with intention. As the team carefully cleaned each tablet, a disturbing pattern emerged. These stones had not simply aged, they had been deliberately damaged. Human faces had their eyes chipped away. Specific symbols were cut in half. Entire sections of text had been selectively erased. This was targeted destruction. Whoever buried these tablets had wanted certain pieces of information destroyed, while leaving everything else intact. Someone, thousands of years ago, had made a careful decision about what the future should and should not know. Microscopic analysis revealed something even stranger. The tablets had been fired twice. The first firing hardened them. The second firing created a glazed, seal-like coating over the surface. And beneath that coating, revealed by advanced imaging, were a second layer of symbols. Hidden text, invisible to the naked eye, different from the carvings on the outside. Linguists compared these hidden symbols to Proto-Sumerian writing, one of the oldest written languages ever identified. 3 words appeared repeatedly across multiple tablets: bind, contain, and watch. One fragment stood apart from the rest. It depicted a single human figure standing between 2 curved lines, possibly rivers. Above the figure, in the hidden script, appeared a phrase that some scholars translated as "the sleepers below." Most mainstream experts rejected the translation as too speculative, but even those who dismissed the specific wording could not explain what the tablets were pointing to when their positions were mapped geometrically. Because when you plot the arrangement of every tablet on a diagram, they form a precise pattern, and that pattern points like an arrow directly beneath the temple's central ring. These were not records, they were directions. And at the end of those directions was something the builders had gone to extraordinary lengths to seal away forever. The descent, breaching the sealed chamber. Ground-penetrating scans of the area beneath the central ring confirmed what the tablet arrangement had suggested: a hollow space deep underground, symmetrical edges, even measurements, a void too perfectly proportioned to be a natural cave. Something had been constructed down there, deliberately, with the kind of precision that had already made this site impossible to explain. Excavation began carefully, layer by layer, until a worker's tool struck something curved. As more earth was removed, an unmistakable pattern emerged, evenly spaced cuts spiraling downward through solid bedrock. A staircase. When lights were lowered into the passage, the team fell silent. The stairs descended in perfect symmetry, winding into darkness so deep that the lights barely reached the bottom. The air that drifted upward was cold, far colder than it should have been, and carried a metallic smell that workers struggled to describe. Wrong, ancient, like something that had not been disturbed in an incomprehensibly long time. Halfway down, the staircase ended at a wall, not stone, mud brick, compressed and interlocked with such density that the structure appeared completely solid. Chemical sensors immediately detected what was leaking between the bricks: mercury. Ancient cultures did use mercury in sacred sites, but its presence here meant something specific and unambiguous. Whoever built this wall did not want it opened. Mercury is toxic. Its vapor is dangerous. This was not a decorative barrier. This was a warning embedded in chemistry. For 2 days, the team carefully disassembled the brick wall, layer by layer. When the final section came loose, the chamber exhaled. A rush of cold, dense metallic air hissed upward through the opening, fogging camera lenses and instrument screens. The team was breathing air that had been sealed underground for more than 10,000 years. When their lights finally reached the interior, what they saw stopped everyone cold. A chamber carved from solid rock, perfectly circular walls, impossibly smooth. Dozens of carvings covering every surface, spirals, suns, handprints. But every single one of them faced downward. Not upward toward heaven, downward toward the earth. Not worship, submission, or perhaps suppression. At the center stood 2 T-shaped pillars, larger than any found above ground, their surfaces covered in intersecting lines that, when digitally mapped, formed a precise astronomical record. The constellations as they appeared in the sky around 10,950 BCE, the exact moment the Younger Dryas catastrophe began. The builders had not chosen that date for celebration. They had chosen it as a marker. This is when it happened. This is when we sealed it. The pulse, something beneath the floor, was still active. The team installed instruments to monitor temperature, air pressure, vibration, and electromagnetic activity before going any deeper. Standard scientific protocol. For the first few hours, the readings were normal. Then the sensors began behaving strangely. Vibration meters detected faint tremors, not random, not matching any external movement. Rhythmic pulses rising from directly beneath the central pillars. A technician recalibrated the equipment, assuming instrument error. The pattern remained, slow, steady, rising and falling at irregular intervals. Temperature sensors began cycling, air near the floor warming briefly, then dropping several degrees without explanation. One researcher quietly noted in the expedition log that the rhythm reminded him of a heartbeat. Then the team heard it, a low hum, resonant enough to vibrate the stone beneath their feet. Not loud, but persistent, and coming from below. Dust began rising from cracks between the floor slabs, not blown by air, but drawn upward, as if pressure from beneath was forcing it through the gaps. An electromagnetic probe, lowered into one of the fractures, detected a repeating signal, weak but structured, that matched no known geological pattern. Some scientists insisted it was a magnetic reaction from deep mineral deposits. Others were not convinced. The pattern was too regular, too deliberate, and it had been producing it for 12,000 years without stopping. Static began interfering with lights. Moisture appeared on the walls in fine droplets that gathered into a thin metallic sheen. Several team members reported that the stone appeared to be breathing, expanding and contracting in rhythm with the vibrations below. When the team ordered controlled removal of the central floor section, the hum deepened as the first slab was lifted. Sensors spiked across the board. Then every sound stopped simultaneously. In the silence, they saw an opening beneath the floor, and descending into it, something that no one on the team had been prepared to find. The vault, a prison built before history. The vault stretched from wall to wall of the chamber beneath, a massive square structure made not of stone but of worked metal, its surface reflecting light in uneven ripples as though oil had been pressed into every seam. It had been built directly into the bedrock. Every joint was fused shut, melted and sealed with what appeared to be extreme, sustained heat. No hinges, no handles, no mechanism suggesting it was ever designed to be reopened. It did not look like a door. It did not look like a container. It looked like a permanent seal, like something built by people who intended the contents to stay inside forever. Symbols ran across the entire surface in deep grooves, spiraling toward the center. Two open hands surrounding a square filled with falling human figures. The same symbols that had been deliberately destroyed on the tablets above. Here they were intact, undefaced, preserved exactly as they were carved. Diamond-tipped drilling tools screamed against the surface without leaving a mark. The noise echoed through the vault like something responding. When a thermal lance was applied with sustained pressure, smoke filled the chamber. After hours of effort, the seal finally cracked. A deep groan rose from within the vault, followed by a rush of air so cold and chemically foul that it drove the entire team backward. The smell burned their throats and left a metallic taste that persisted for hours. A camera probe was lowered through the opening. The interior was larger than anyone had anticipated. A hollow square chamber lined with metal panels that glowed faintly under the camera's lights. The walls were coated in black, a combination of bitumen, mercury, and powdered metal that laboratory analysis would later confirm. Ancient civilizations had used each of these substances separately in purification or preservation contexts. Combined in this way, they created something different, a chemical barrier lethal to bacteria, impervious to air, and designed not to preserve what was inside, but to isolate it. As the camera turned, shapes appeared along the walls. At first, they appeared to be carved human figures, detailed, artistic, deliberate. Then the camera zoomed in. They were not carved, they were burned. Carbon and calcium fused directly into the metal surface. Under ultraviolet light, the outlines glowed, human silhouettes, twisted, flattened, their postures suggesting not ritual sacrifice, but sudden, total death. People caught mid-motion and pressed into the walls by heat so intense it had no natural explanation. These were not sculptures. These were people. The people who had sealed the vault from the inside, who had sacrificed themselves to complete the containment, and who had been consumed by the process. At the center of the vault stood a raised stone platform covered in hardened resin and the charred remains of burned ropes. Something had been restrained there, tied down, then deliberately set on fire using a compound of plant oil and metal oxide, a mixture designed to ignite when exposed to open air and burn every remaining molecule of oxygen from the chamber before it was permanently sealed. When the team opened the vault, that compound reacted again. The freezing chemical vapor that had driven them back was not supernatural. It was 12,000-year-old chemistry completing its original cycle. Beside the platform stood a statue carved in exquisite, horrifying detail. A human figure, mouth open in a silent scream, hands clawing upward toward a sky it could not reach. The surface was wet with thick black residue, and beneath the surface, vein-like lines ran through the stone, so precisely rendered that one researcher whispered that it looked newly made. The statue had been placed there after the sealing. A warning, a demonstration. This is what happened to those who tried to contain what is here. This is what you risk if you disturb it. The message, what the builders left, carved into the walls. After the vault was resealed and the team retreated to safety, analysts spent weeks studying every photograph and recording captured inside. Along the metal walls, carved in shallow but deliberate lines, was a language never previously catalogued, sharing structural similarities with early Proto-Sumerian and Anatolian scripts, but predating both. Over several weeks of analysis, 3 clear phrases were isolated and translated with reasonable confidence. We sealed what called from below. It answered through stone. We broke the earth to silence it. These were not prayers. These were not myths. These were records, written by the builders themselves, describing in plain terms exactly what they had done and why they had done it. They had found something beneath the earth that produced sound, chemical reaction, electromagnetic energy, something that responded to them, something that called. And when they answered, it called louder. When they tried to stop it, it pushed back through the stone itself. They could not destroy it. They had no technology adequate to eliminate whatever they had found. So, they did the only thing left to them. They buried it, sealed it with every chemical and physical barrier available to them, lost people in the process of sealing it, and then built an enormous stone monument on top of the site, not to celebrate what was there, but to ensure no one would ever dig there again. Göbekli Tepe is not the world's first temple. It is the world's first containment site, built 12,000 years ago by people who understood chemistry, pressure, and isolation, and who understood that what lay beneath them was too dangerous to leave uncovered and too indestructible to be destroyed. They built it to protect us, and we dug it up anyway. The aftermath, what happened to the team and the site. In the days following the opening of the vault, something shifted in the camp that no scientific instrument was designed to measure. Tools rusted overnight that had been in perfect condition the day before. Camera batteries drained to zero within minutes of being fully charged. Lights flickered erratically whenever anyone approached within 2 meters of the vault's position, even after it had been resealed. Several team members began reporting sounds at night. Faint, rhythmic tapping that seemed to originate from beneath the floor of the sealed chamber. Slow, deliberate, like something below the metal responding to the disruption above it. One researcher documented in her personal notes, "It is behaving like it knows we are here." The camera probe that had been lowered inside the vault was retrieved coated in a thin, oily film that glowed faintly under ultraviolet light. Laboratory analysis of the residue found organic compounds carrying metallic traces that matched nothing in any recorded chemical database. The sample began breaking down before a complete molecular analysis could be completed. Within 48 hours of retrieval, it was gone. By the fourth morning after the vault opening, 3 senior team members had quietly refused to re-enter the lower chamber. No formal statement was made. No incident report was filed. They simply stopped going down. The lead researcher, in a brief recorded statement, said, "We are dealing with something our current frameworks are not adequate to describe. I am not going to speculate in public, but I will say this. The builders of this site understood what was here far better than we do, and they made a very deliberate choice." Within days, the Turkish Ministry of Culture declared the lower excavation zone a restricted site. The chamber beneath the main ring was filled with compacted clay and reinforced with stone. Officially, the closure was described as a safety measure to prevent structural collapse. No further excavation has been authorized. The vault remains buried. The site remains restricted, and the recording of that low, rhythmic hum, rising and falling like a pulse from beneath 12,000 years of stone and silence, remains in an archive that has not been made publicly available. The conclusion. What does this mean for all of us? So here is where we are. 12,000 years ago, a civilization sophisticated enough to engineer precision stonework, understand chemistry, map constellations, and work with metal encountered something beneath the earth that terrified them so completely that they chose death over leaving it unsealed. They lost people in the process of closing it. They carved warnings in every language and symbol available to them. They built one of the largest and most enduring structures in human history, directly on top of the site, to make sure no one would ever go looking. And then, in the 21st century, we went looking. The builders called it something that called from below, something that answered through stone, something for which their only solution was to break the earth itself, to silence it. The physical evidence is real and documented. Burned human remains fused to metal walls. A chemical sealing compound still reacting after 12 millennia. Electromagnetic pulses rising from beneath the vault floor. Symbols warning in multiple, overlapping languages. Do not open this. Do not open this. Do not open this. We opened it anyway. The vault is sealed again now. The chamber is filled. The site is restricted. Whatever is down there is back in the dark, in the cold, in the silence that the builders of Göbekli Tepe spent their lives and their deaths creating. The builders left us a warning. We just were not ready to read it. If this video changed the way you see the past and the present, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Because what we uncover next may not give us any more time to prepare.